This week on the Baseline Podcast, Josh and I are here to talk about the big news that happened this week from the Juan Soto contract, which just seems so unrealistic, but yet so realistic. And then we talk about the college football playoff. We're going to talk about the matchups, who got an easy draw, who got a hard draw, and who's coming out on top this week. All that and so much more coming up on the Baseline Podcast. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Baseline Podcast. I'm Ben. That's Josh, and we are back. It's mid-December, well, not mid-December. It's like the beginning / mid-December, in that range where you look at the calendar and you go, at least while we're recording this, we have 15 days till Christmas. Josh, how are you feeling? You feeling jolly? Are you feeling ready for this Christmas season, or are you just more like, I just need to get there first?
We got all the Christmas decorations up in the house now, so I think that helps a little bit. But yeah, watched a handful of Christmas movies. Do you have a favorite by chance?
Yes, I do. I do. I'm a kind of like one of those guys that has like, the ones I watch every year. But my favorite Elf is always gonna be my favorite Christmas movie. And it is I think it's just because like I remember watching it when I was in school as a kid. Because that came out when I was like, I think in late elementary school. Um and so for me, Elf has always been my kind of go-to. But I would say a very close second, one that lately, the last few years, I've really enjoyed is Polar Express. Like it's just such a
Really?
classic. So those are my two favorite. I mean, there are other ones like Home Alone is always I'll always watch Home Alone.
Yeah,
I
it's a
think I think
staple.
I think for me it gets that one gets more like I think with Elf it's just the humor is really good. I think with Home Alone, sometimes I think it's still a great movie. I think they get worse as they go on, um, but yeah, I think for me it goes like Elf, Polar Express, and then I'm gonna go Home Alone. Those are like the
Gotcha.
top three, but Elf for sure is mine.
Yeah.
What about you?
How the Grinch Stole Christmas with Jim Carrey is my favorite. It's been my favorite for years. I love that movie. I love the acting in that. I think he does a solid job in that.
Oh, it's Jim Carrey. Yeah.
Uh, yeah. And then the Santa Claus with Tim Allen.
Oh,
It's
that's
got to be
really
up there
good.
too. Yeah, it's
Yeah, that's
definitely
I
a
forgot about that
staple.
one. Yeah, and I think that one's just maybe kind of died off for a lot of people recent years. I don't know why, but I know a lot of people that love that movie.
Yeah. Yeah, good
Yeah.
stuff there.
Oh,
But Home Alone and Elf are definitely staples that
yeah.
I'll watch every year too. Polar
Yeah.
Express is
Do you
kind
do
of
you
like when
feel
I
like
can.
you're kind of a guy that like as the closer Christmas gets, you'll like repeat your movies again, like just as like even if it gets closer to like the 20th, 21st. Like that's why I feel like I sometimes just like, you know what? I'm gonna watch it again. Why not?
I don't
Yeah.
I don't get a whole lot of repeat, honestly. It's mostly like oh shoot, it's 3 days till Christmas. I still have 10 movies that I gotta watch.
Yeah. Do you
By
do
the way,
you are you a Hallmark guy or not?
not a
Like
Hallmark guy. No,
no.
I'm never on that channel. Christmas Vacation's another one I got to throw out
Oh,
there
that's a
too
good
that
one. Oh, that's
I
a good
just
one.
seen a few days ago.
Oh, so good. That's
Yeah.
such a good movie.
Yeah, good stuff there. But yeah, that's how it's going over here. Looking forward to celebrating Christmas. But other than that, we've had some big sports news that we're going to
Yeah,
talk about
man.
too. Some big
It's
money getting
great,
thrown
man.
around.
Yeah.
Mostly all of it to Juan Soto,
Yeah.
which is official now.
Yeah.
It was looking like the Mets, the Yankees, the Blue
Blue
Jays, the Red
Jays, which is just
Sox.
funny. Blue Jays have gotten screwed over 2 years in a row.
Yeah,
Love it.
yeah, yeah. It's nice to see them
No one wants
try
to go
at
to
least.
Canada. No one wants to go to Canada.
Yeah, I th that might be a big barrier. But anyway, it's the Mets that come out with a what was it, 15 years,
Yep.
765 million
65
dollar
million.
deal
That
that
can
can
turn
bump
into
over
800. Yeah.
800
Yeah.
with that opt-out clause thing in there. But it looks like the Yankees were right in it till the end. Their offer was
Yeah.
16 years, 760 million. And Soto went back to them. I think he was trying to get both teams in a bidding war. New York Yanks finally just said,
Well,
"No, you know
I
what?
have
We're
a little
out."
nugget about that. I have a little nugget about that I read.
Is it about the suite?
Yes, it is about the suite, but it's the fascinating part about that is that there's been other stars for the Yankees that have went to the Yankees and said, "I want this in our deals." But they've always, you know how the Yankees are. They're very professional. They have their way of doing things, and they've
Yeah,
always said no. And so they feel like it'd be a bad look to the legacy of Derek Jeter, to current star and Aaron Judge. They're like, "Hey, we're gonna give him a suite." Now that if that really is what like broke it, dude, that's gonna haunt Yankee fans for so long that they weren't willing just to give a box with the seats in it. Um,
yeah.
to
But
me, that's
apparently
the best part.
that was a big deal, even early on when he wanted to get one and they wouldn't let him do it. Um, Yeah, just something with like the security team too, something like that, just not letting access to certain people. But yeah, this it looks like it was a big money thing. And honestly, after we saw Shohei get 700
Yeah.
million, which was like earth-shattering in itself, because it's like, okay, this is a two-way player, pitcher and hitter. You got to pay him
Makes
like you
sense.
would
It makes
two
sense.
players.
Yeah, it makes
Right.
sense.
So it's like Shohei's getting 700. We're not going to see a 700 for another long, long time.
Let alone
Because,
800.
yeah, because wasn't Trout like the
He was
last record holder?
470. It was like
And he was like
470.
470. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then Shohei gets 700. I'm like, okay, that's like two elite players in one. And then you got Soto over here getting
I
well
just
over 700
it's
for just being
still
a hitter.
I know he's
I
good,
think it's too
man.
much. I don't blame the Yankees for not like trying to get in this bidding war with the Mets.
Yeah.
Steve Cohn's a guy that wants to
He's
flex his
trying.
muscles
He
and
also gave
is
up two
trying
minor
over
league teams,
there.
by the way. Just read an article. He gave up two minor league teams as well because he had to sell two minor league teams to cover more of the expenses.
Hmm,
So he sold the AAA and the single A team to make more
gotcha.
money. No,
Yeah, dude
it's
wants to win over
fascinating,
there,
man.
but I can't blame New York. I mean,
No.
Judge isn't even getting that. Cole isn't
Yeah.
getting that. Nobody on the team's
You know,
getting money like that. And for a one-way guy, I
yeah.
don't think I would have given it either.
I mean,
You just hate to see it walk though, because of how good him and Judge were together.
yeah, I guess for me, it's just like I never see the benefit. Like Otani was different, so I don't consider him when I'm saying this. I've never been able to understand why you give someone like him that much money because Soto has been injured, not a lot, but he has been injured. He like it's just tough to me. Like a pitcher, I tend to be like, you know what, maybe you can give more because a pitcher tends the consistency can tend to last with pitchers, I think, for the most part. Hitters, you can have a real bad year now, and the difference is I think the Dodgers obviously deferred Otani's contract, till the end basically.
Yeah, and no
But the
deferred money in
Mets,
the
but
Soto
the Mets
deal.
are just like, yeah, screw it. We'll pay him 65 million a year or whatever it's going to be. Um, it's just I feel like it's too much money. I think and I read it. I think I sent it to you. I don't know if you saw it, but basically it was like they showed the Guardians what they would have paid him, and it was like 15 years, 7 million. And I was just like, that is such the Guardians meme if I've ever seen one. Like that's just such what they would have done. But no, I look at it as like for Yankee fans, I think they're discouraged. But if you think about it, maybe now you look at it and go, we signed two outfielders now. We signed maybe another two pitchers for a quarter of what you're paying Soto. And so look, I don't understand why he went to the Mets because I feel like the Mets are a lot farther off than most of the other teams that are bidding for him. Like it
Yeah.
didn't really make sense to me. Like of all the teams was bidding for him, like that's
People
the
like
last
Passon
team.
and Ben Verlander are saying it wasn't just money. It was ultimately he felt that the Mets had a better future too. But when the
What,
MLB tweets out the
Lindor?
graphics with the potential lineup over there, and they're probably not going to be able to keep Pete Alonso now after
I
giving
mean,
this contract out.
unless these guys agree to like, because Lindor's already getting paid 300 million. You're talking about $1 billion between two players.
Yeah,
That is wild.
for sure. So, I mean, Soto's one of the best young players in the league, no doubt about it.
He's
I'd say
26
he's one
though,
of the
man. He's 26.
still, yeah, yeah. So after 15 years, he's going to be 41, and this contract is probably
Joey
going
Votto,
to,
we've been there. I'm just letting everyone know, Reds fans, we've been
yeah.
there. We know what it's
But
like at
in
the
deals
end.
like this, you almost always gotta like pay them basically for what they're going to be in their prime. Like Albert
Yeah.
Pujols signed a similar deal with the Angels that didn't age too well at the end, and I mean some that's just how the big contracts go. But yes, so when I look at what the Yankees can do now, I'm like, okay, you got 700 million now. You can probably go and get three or four guys with, but
Oh yeah.
it is interesting seeing New York now. I know that they'll still buy guys, right? Like they went out and got Garrett Cole, but they seem to be
They're a
trying
lot
to
more
do a lot more
cautious.
home, yeah, a lot more cautious. Like they didn't even try to go out and get Bryce Harper, and that's a
Yeah.
guy that said he was a Yankees fan as a kid. They missed out on
And
Machado.
with
They
that
missed
right
out on
field and with that
Soto.
right field fence, he would have lived in that
Hmm.
ballpark.
Yeah, yeah, but we're seeing a lot more like I guess development, a lot more like cautiousness. It's very not like what
It's
George
the old
Steinbrenner was when he ran the team.
well, it's the old Yankees when Derek Jeter was coming up. You had the Jorge Posadas of the world. You had the Derek Jeters that were getting developed in the system, and then they came back up, right? So
Hmm.
for me, that is what I've noticed too, is that I feel like they're going back to that original route where because I think they've been so dry of any success in the postseason for so long. Like you can't just keep buying players, and I say this to to teams in our league here in football, it's like you can't keep buying players in the Hungarian league. Like now that team that won the title last year who bought a bunch of players, they have no one left because they didn't develop, right? So I think it's the same with baseball, probably more than any sport. If you don't develop your own guys and you just trade them away for these studs, what happens if those guys get hurt? And we see it with the Reds. The Reds, had a good success from 2010 to 2014 and then didn't develop anyone and relied on Joey Votto and Brandon Phillips to be their dudes. And at one point, it just kind of fades away. So I think that's the same thing with the Yankees. I think they're trying to realize, how do we balance it? The Dodgers have done a great job with that. How do you balance it, but also spend the money as well?
Yeah, so like Volpe's a Yankee product,
Yep.
Oswaldo Cabrera is a Yankee product, Austin Wells is, Aaron Judge is,
Gill,
Gil. I think that well, Gleyber Torres came from the Cubs, but I think most of
but
his,
still
if not all his
developed. Yeah.
pro careers in New York. Yeah, so that's
Talk
a
about a guy that needs to go from the Yankees. That guy can't hit right now.
Gleyber Torres.
Torres. Yeah, he just so inconsistent, man.
I think
Like
he's still a
the
free agent, but if they want to pay him a little more, they got some extra cash now.
yeah.
Yeah, but yes, so we'll probably see a couple other big free agent signings here because, like I said, Pete Alonso's still available, but next year too, Vlad Guerrero Jr. is going to be the big name on the market. And
Yeah.
after seeing what Soto just got, wonder what kind of money Vlad could pull if he can have another like 30 homer,
He
100
would have to have a good
RBI.
year because I think it's
Cl-
different than Soto because he hasn't been as consistent throughout his career as Soto.
Still like less time it seems like because he
Yeah.
came out with the bang initially and then he went cold a little bit and then it was just this season was kind of like Vlad's back to what we saw when he initially came up because we were wondering if he was going to flame out early.
Yeah.
Kyle Tucker's another one.
No, and
The
I'll be
Astros just announced him and Framber Valdez, both available for trade if they can get a good enough deal.
and my interesting thing is Norland Arenado is also up for sale by the Cardinals, but my interesting thing is like with De La Cruz, the Reds, like I think they need. I've said this year. I said they need to pull a Braves and just sign him for whatever he wants now. Lock him up for 10 years, 11 years, and you have that cornerstone, right? And I think more teams are following the Braves. If you've noticed, like they start signing their
Yep.
guys younger, and they're like, screw the arbitration years. We'll pay him maybe a little less or maybe a little more if that means we can lock him up for 11, 12 years. And I think the Reds need to do that and start freaking spending money instead of just sitting on it and let it burn.
I think remember the Nationals initially were going to do that with Soto. They offered him
14
15
years. It
years,
was 14
440
years.
million, I
Yeah.
think,
14 years. It was
in
445.
2022.
Yeah. 14 years, 445, I believe
Turned
it
it
was.
down and
Well, someone said like he bet on himself. He said,
yeah,
I can go out and get a better,
sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Now it is crazy to think that in 4 straight seasons now he's gonna be with 4 different teams to start the opening day, which is
Yeah.
wild.
So that's what aggressive spending looks like to try to win. Now, let me tell you what aggressive spending doesn't look like, Ben, with some announcements coming out of Cleveland.
Oh,
Not that
jeez.
I wanted to re-sign these guys anyway, but Ben Lively went for 2 years, 30 million somewhere. I was like, okay, well, that's a little much for that guy. And then Alex Cobb just signed a 1 year deal with Detroit. Uh, but we kept Bieber
Yeah.
for I think two
Who
years,
who wanted to
26.
go, who could have went other places but took
Yeah,
took
had
less.
had more money to go other places, but wanted to be in Cleveland, so he took a hometown discount. But the Dolans just announced, Ben, that they are canceling Guards Fest. Not just this year, but they're not going to make it an annual event anymore. It's going to be a every 3 years event from here on out. And it's coming out that it's based on what fan surveys have said, except all the fans that are talking about it on social media are saying this is absolutely not what the fans wanted. What this looks like, even more now than ever, with all those other moves that I just told you, is that they are looking to pinch pennies everywhere it's possible. Coming off a season where attendance was as high as it was since 2008, you got the extra revenue from making the ALCS. Merch sales were shooting up too. You got all this extra revenue to go out and try to
Oh,
get
it's
some
the,
guys that
it's
help
the
your
new
roster
new
out
athletics.
or to extend the younger guys like Bybee and Quan. And instead, they're just looking to pocket all of it. And it makes you, as a Cleveland fan, just not even want to go to a game because you're like, well, my money's just going to literally go into this guy's wallet anyways. It's not going to go out and get a guy like Willie Adames, who just signed with the Giants on a pretty solid contract, too. It's going to go right to Paul Dolan. So maybe I won't even go to any games this year, Ben, but
It's
I think
like,
I say
hold
that
on.
a lot of times and still end up at least
Let
one
me
game.
let me
Can't
look
help
real quick.
myself.
Is it the Oakland Athletics? Oh no, it's the Guardians. But it feels very similar to what's going on in Oakland or what did go on in Oakland. And
Speaking of the A's, they just signed Severino, 3 years,
yeah,
67 million. That's
well,
the largest contract in franchise history.
yeah, and look, I've always been bad about the Reds, but at least the Reds are willing to spend money. Like they always are putting money into the community. They're always putting money back in the team, the stadium. You've been to a Great American Ballpark. It's a beautiful stadium
Oh yeah.
and it's a great atmosphere. They always, that Hall of Fame there is amazing. Probably the best Hall of Fame for a pro baseball team. Fascinating for me. It's what do you feel like? Do you like? Is there going to be a point where players are just like, I want to leave? Because I feel like that's what's going to happen with the Guardians. Like, there's going to be a point where they're going to be
It's
like,
it's
either,
what has happened every year. Like we've
yeah,
seen it with guys like Manny Ramirez, Jim Thome, CC Sabathia, Victor Martinez, Francisco Lindor. Like eventually, like Jose Ramirez is the first one that like signed a longer extension with the team, but he's also the only one that got offered more than 20 million a year too
yeah,
to do that. But yeah, I think most of the other guys, they're just gonna decide that it's not worth it here to just have like that metaphorical ceiling capped on you because of the way
yeah.
that we spend and the way that we run the team. So they're definitely always going to be able to get more money elsewhere outside of Cleveland. So it's not going to shock me if some of the younger guys in the team, like if we end up sending Naylor away, like that won't surprise me. If we would have let Bieber walk, that wouldn't have surprised me either.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough job for a GM too. Like, you kind of have to put yourself like, well, here we go.
Yeah. And even now, like the talk among the fans is like 2026 or 27 is like the year. It's like, what are you
Yeah.
talking about? We just made the ALCS. Why isn't 2024 the year? I mean 2025. Like, why don't we go ahead and with the extra revenue we just generated, go out and make our team even better?
Because they need to pay for their Teslas, Josh. They need to pay for their Teslas.
So annoying, dude.
At
So
least the
annoying,
Reds don't
but
have that bad of ownership. They're bad, but not that bad.
right. Yeah, I'm trying to think if any other big deals just went down. I seen Dodgers kept Blake Trinan, their closer,
Yeah.
2 years, 23 million. That was another solid name off the board. But yeah, free agency's going nuts. Like I said, Soto was the big name, and he just got his big deal. So it's going to be interesting seeing what the big free agents of next cycle next year come around for. But don't think we have any other big baseball news to mention other than that.
Yeah.
But we do have a college football playoff field now. We
Yeah.
have a 12-team bracket set. We've got the four teams at the top with the auto bids.
Don't get me
And
started. Oh, don't get me started.
yeah, I was very against 12 teams from the start in general. And then if they were going to do 12, it's like, okay, well, why aren't we ranking them 1 through 12 like we did in the 14 format, 1 through 4? Why are we allowing the possibility of a team that's ranked 20th and would miss the playoff in that scenario? Not one of the best 12 teams in the country, but we're going to shoot them up to like 3 or 4, and then they also get a first round bye. Like, what are we doing here? And Penn State like gets
Oh, don't.
rewarded for
Ooh,
losing the Big Ten championship with the
mm,
easiest path possibly to get to the
oh,
championship. But yeah,
mm,
so
mm.
I know the big we can talk all things amongst the playoff bracket, Ben, but I guess I'll go
Oh,
ahead and let you voice
yeah.
your thoughts on the
Oh,
12 team this whole time
okay.
and whether they got cemented or you have a change of
Yeah.
heart. I'm guessing not so much change of heart though.
No, I've never thought it's been a good idea. And like Josh knows I'm going on a rampage here because he kind of heard me before we started. But
Yeah.
um I my biggest issue is how they've put these teams in. No offense to Boise State, had a great year. I'm sorry, they're not the third best team in the country. Like to
Yeah, they
me,
voted them as a top
yeah,
12, but we're going to put them
exactly.
as like they won the Mountain West, so that
And then
guarantees a
Arizona
3 seed.
then Arizona State also the same boat, but also Scatabo needs to shut up. He's not a Heisman Trophy winner. Like, stop, dude. You're not as good as Janty. We're just gonna stop that there. All right. It's very like you're a good running back. You ain't that good. Um, I could go on with that anyways. But this is my frustration, right? Is that I get penalizing Notre Dame. I get penalizing Notre Dame. I think you can agree with
Yeah.
me too, Josh. Like that's the one team, penalize them. They're not in a conference. They should never be allowed to have a bye. But why on God's green earth are teams like, let's say, Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, sorry, not Georgia, sorry, Texas, Ohio State. Um, you have these other teams that, let's be honest, Ohio State plays Boise State tomorrow. Texas plays Boise State tomorrow, or even Arizona
They're at
State.
least favored by two
It's
touchdowns.
at least two touchdowns. Now, we could talk about matchups or whatever, and we will, but that's my first problem. And here's my second twofold problem. First off, why does Penn State have the easiest route to the national title game of any team when, first off, let's clarify, in the regular season they beat no one. They lost to Ohio State. Then they go and get, to be honest, the game was not as close as it seemed like in the Oregon game. Oregon's defense just played bad. Um, I struggle with I don't struggle with Ohio State not being in the top five even, but I do struggle with Penn State being ahead of them because
The head to head.
it's just weird. Yeah, that's just a weird one to me. Uh, that one's just that bothers me. I know they didn't want a Big Ten matchup or a cheap game, but I'm like, you have Penn State playing SMU and then they're going to go play Boise State.
Yeah.
Like, you're giving them like pretty much a direct shot to a Final Four appearance when, let's be honest, they're not the four best teams. We both have talked about this numerously. I don't think they are when it comes to a bracket sense. Look at Georgia, like they're getting a bye and they have no quarterback. Like they're going to have a bye with no quarterback. We talk about like SMU. Look, we'll talk about the Alabama thing, but I guess my biggest thing right now is that I think the format's so dumb because, okay, if you want to do it this way, fine. But what should happen is after the first round, you should reseed. Oregon should not have to face Tennessee or freaking Ohio State as their first game. That's just murder for the best team in the country. And
Murder, dude.
then if you let's look at Ohio State, for example. If they beat Tennessee, which, by the way, not a slouch game, super hard game to
Seven and a
win.
half point favorites
So
right now, but yeah, it's going to be
you
close.
beat Tennessee, then you have to go play Oregon in the Rose Bowl, which is basically in the backyard of Oregon. Then let's say you win that. Then who do you go face? Oh, I don't know. The team of, oh, who would it be? Oh yeah, it'd be Arizona State or whoever that be, but most likely it'll be Texas. So then you got to face Texas. Then you beat Texas.
Probably,
You're
maybe
gonna have
Georgia.
either
I mean, this is all
Georgia,
speculation, but it's
Georgia,
potentially the hardest path
and
imaginable.
I'm going. And so for me, like it doesn't make sense to me. And again, we say this every year, and I'm tired of saying it every year. Like, just can we have a committee that's not like that is football focused, that knows what matchups are like? I don't care about ratings. Like, awesome, I want ratings, but I also want it to be fair for teams that deserve it. You know, Oregon deserves to have the easiest path to the final. They deserve that. And people can be mad about Ohio State's ranking. Now, I also go back to, like, I'm mad about Penn State being ahead, but I'm also like, Ohio State didn't take care of business against Michigan. There's a different situation, right?
Hmm.
But I look at it too, like, I think SMU is going to get destroyed the first round. I think Clemson's going to get destroyed. I think Boise State, whoever they face, is just going to get beat to smithereens. I think Arizona State's going to get beat up. There's a good chance you'll have Notre Dame in the final. And oh, that would hurt. That would make us both so frustrated if Notre Dame's in the final. Like, just bother me,
I
right?
think more you than me,
They
but
lost to a 3-9 team. Like, let's just put that in perspective.
yeah,
Um, but anyways, I guess, and again, I'll finish up by saying this, that people are going to fight you, especially people from the SEC. Which, by the way, can we talk about the Big Ten getting four teams in? But the SEC fans are going to be like, well, Alabama's not in it. They are a blue blood. Okay, then why is your blue blood lose to a 6-6 Oklahoma and a 6-6 Vanderbilt team? Right, and their losses are bad. Yes, they beat Georgia, but let's be honest, Josh, we've said it all year. Georgia's very inconsistent. And also, SMU lost one game and it was in their title game on a last second, basically, field goal for
2 games.
Clemson. Yeah, sorry,
The
two
BYU
games.
lost week
Yeah,
two.
BYU as well. Yeah. But what I'm saying is that Alabama didn't deserve to be in. And I'm going to
No,
stick my foot by that. And there
yeah,
are other, like, I would have rather put Miami in over Alabama in that sense. But again, that's just me on the rant. Josh, take it away because I
yeah.
lose.
I can speak on the Bama SMU. So as it turned out, the way that the committee voted, the top 12 teams, Alabama was right there at 11.
Yeah.
What screwed them was how those teams ranked below them got
Yeah.
to shoot up into an auto bid spot.
Yeah.
because of the way that we decided to value a conference championship, that every conference is the same. You are what your record says
Yeah.
you are. Everybody's playing an even playing field. It was very NFL-esque in the setup, and we know that college
Oh
football
yeah.
is not like that at all. On one hand, your record definitely isn't what you say you are, but you have to win your games too. So to
Yeah.
Alabama and the AD and Nick Saban
Oh,
and
I hate
everybody
that so
else down
much. Oh
south
my
that's
God.
saying that why would we go out and schedule
You
these
play the
games with
Citadel,
Ohio
dude.
State
You play
or
Mercer.
yeah, like it wasn't an out of conference game that cost them. It was
No.
the own teams that they were going to play in the conference regardless that finished near the bottom. Like you couldn't handle
Go be Notre Dame.
the bottom of the SEC. So get out of here with that. Like yes, SMU does not have a win that they can point to that's as significant as
Neither does Penn
Georgia,
State.
but all of their losses were to ranked teams at least, and they were close, excuse me, close games. They lose to
Yeah.
Clemson on a field goal by 1 point. They lose to BYU by three, and Bama goes out and gets their butt handed to them by Oklahoma. They
Who's
lose to,
awful.
yep, they lose to Vanderbilt. They lose a competitive game to Tennessee at least, but still, like when we're looking at resumes right here, I don't think that if you got to pick one or the other, I'm glad that they didn't drop SMU out and punish them for making a conference championship in a
Yeah.
12-game field. Like that has to matter. We saw in the 14 field, like you could lose a conference championship like TCU did, and you still stayed in the field. But again, I think you got to look at a 4 team and a 12 team a little differently. Like you
Yeah.
can't be having a team drop out of the top 12 entirely because they played on a week that another team sat out.
Yeah.
Like you don't just fall out of the top 12 for that. Like you got to make it count. I don't think you got to make conference championship winners worth so much that they're a top
Oh
four
my
seed. You
goodness.
can you can guarantee an auto bid spot,
Yeah.
just not a buy.
No.
Because I think Boise State at 11 and Arizona State at 12 and maybe Clemson at 10 or however you want to seed that makes a
That
lot more
makes sense.
sense than the way that they ended up doing it. But yeah, so Alabama fans, they got nobody to be mad at except I guess the people themselves for one for losing those 3 games, and then the school and everyone else that voted on this format and saying like, yeah, this makes sense because the committee voted them a top 12 team. They just got screwed over by the format at the end of the day.
Yeah. Look, Josh, you've said it all year. You've said like this is either going to be the best thing that ever happened to college football or it's going to be a chaotic thing that ever happened to college football. Like you've talked about that all summer long. You said, you know what? I'll hold my cards. I'll be willing to be like, oh, this is amazing.
We'll see what
But you also
happens.
said like, and again, this is what I agree with. This is going to be the most entertaining college football we've ever seen during bowl season. I will 100% agree with that. It's going to be so entertaining. You're going to have Ohio State versus Tennessee. It's going to be a night game in the shoe. It's going to be freezing cold, and
Notre
that
Dame
game is
versus
going to be
Indiana.
amazing. But again, I do want to say that at the end of the day, like you got to fix these rate like where they're ranked because like it's just really hard for me to go like I don't view Arizona State and Boise State as like a top four team in the country. Like if you're going to label these the top four, then why are they not 3 and 4? That's how I believe it should be.
Yeah.
And again, I know people are going to fight me on that. Like, you're just a homeboy for Ohio State. I'm like, no, I never said Ohio State was a top four team. What I'm saying is that there are teams that deserve to be up there. And Boise State, as much as you take Janty out of that equation, that there may be a top 25 team, right? So I don't know, man. I just it's so frustrating because I feel like we have this conversation every year, and like, what in 4 years are we going to be in a 28 team playoff? Like, I don't know what's going to happen, and it's
Yeah.
it also hurts for other bowl games. Like, I'm not even wanting to watch other bowl games now. I don't know. It's just the whole thing's weird.
Yeah. That's been my thing with like the 12 team is there's not 12 teams in a given year that can win a
No,
championship. And just because you make the playoff 12 teams doesn't mean that all of a sudden you have 12
it's
playoff
based
caliber
on where you
teams
get
now.
placed. Because you could get a really easy route like Penn State. Like, do I think Penn State's a national title worthy champion? No, but
But
they're
Penn
going to have
State
a real
also beats the teams they're supposed to. So the way
yes.
it drew up, they could make a pretty good run.
Exactly what I'm saying. So it's based on kind of where you get placed and when you're like a high state, you have a terrible loss at the end of the year and you don't have a chance to bounce back from that. It's you get what you get. So
What
it's
would
gonna
you
be fun
think
though.
about in the BCS era if we just had Oregon and Georgia play for the national championship?
See, I struggle with that because then I struggle with Georgia and I don't think they are the second best team. So I always struggle with
Well,
that.
let me argue maybe how the BCS would argue. So Notre Dame is not a conference champion, also has the worst loss in the country. You can't put them in for that reason.
Yeah.
Texas has two losses to the same team and no ranked wins.
Yeah.
Same thing to Penn State, no win that they can stand on. Lost to the two best teams that they played. Um, who else was up here in the discussion? Ohio State, you just mentioned. They got two wins, but they got two losses too. And Georgia has two losses, granted, but they also have a conference championship. They got probably the hardest schedule of the country, the most battle-tested team, beating Tennessee, beating Texas twice, beating Clemson. So you could look at them and then reward Oregon for going undefeated in a Power Five conference or a
Yeah.
Power Four conference and say these are our two best teams and we're going to have them play for a national championship. I think that's how the BCS would have shaken up.
No, I agree with you.
And then maybe in the
Yeah.
14 playoff, we're seeing Georgia, the first two-loss team, get in with Oregon, and then probably Notre Dame. And would it be
Probably Texas. I would see them putting Texas in there.
since Texas came in to the
Yeah.
week at two and then just dropped them down to
Yeah.
four?
That's what I
Probably
think would
something like
happen.
that. Yeah, because there wasn't really any undefeated or one-loss teams
No. So,
that shook up.
yeah, man, it drives me nuts. But at the end of the day, like I think these matchups are good matchups. I think, Indiana versus Notre Dame, a classic. I think Notre Dame fans stop being so cocky because Indiana's no slouch. I've seen them do some crazy things. Now, I think they when they face bigger talent, they struggle. Um, I think Ohio State versus Tennessee is going to be it could be the most electrifying game in Ohio Stadium history, just from the fact that you have a night game at the shoe and a playoff game. Like that's
Yeah.
awesome. Um, and obviously, the other thing that drives me nuts about the playoff now too is like also the NCAA can't seem to figure out that a transfer portal during this time is absolutely stupid. And
I was
with
listening to
signing
Zach
day,
Smith and Chris Drew talk about Devin Brown going to the portal and how if they make a run all the way to the national
he
championship,
has
because
to
he's
he
still
has to
going to stay
leave.
with the
Yeah, he has
team,
to leave at one point.
what if, and then say, what if Will Howard gets hurt and he has to be the starter?
Yeah,
And then once it comes time to the national championship game, he's already put his name in the portal. He has to go because classes start.
yeah,
It's like that screws over Ohio State. Yeah, it's like having NFL free agency during the NFL playoffs.
yeah. It's so
Or
it's
it's so weird. They
it's
got to get these
weird.
windows fixed.
Yeah, and I think they're going to have to, and I think they will. But yeah, man, it's just a weird time, man. It's a weird time, and you look at these classes. Obviously Oregon made some huge, flips and things like that, and all these recruiting classes. But then you're like, as a coach, you're like, man, like I got to keep track of these recruiting classes. I got to make sure these guys don't decommit. Also, I got to make sure they actually signed, their agreements. And then I've got to go work in the transfer portal. I got to keep our guys here. Like, I understand why Gus Malzahn and Chip Kelly have said, screw it. I'm done. I want to go back to just coaching football. And I understand why more coaches are doing that now. And it's becoming more of a real thing. And, I'm interested to see what happens next and in the world of college football. And stuff needs to change and hopefully it will.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out as this 12 team layout continues if it is going to water down the regular season like I feel it did. But
Yeah.
if it ends up being, maybe we'll also learn that maybe it was portal and NIL money leveling the playing field, and so it brought a lot more teams closer together. Because that also could be a
Yeah.
interpretation of everything. It's just like all these things are happening at once, so it's hard to point to maybe one or maybe a collection of all of them. But yeah, I think the other big story from the week was Scott Frost got another coaching job, Ben. He is back on the old stomping grounds at UCF. Took that head coaching job after you just mentioned Gus Malzahn. Took off to be a coordinator without even getting fired. Kind of weird, but not uncommon. We've seen Chip Kelly do the same thing. But Scott Frost is back at UCF, and he's the one that brought them to like this level of prominence where he last had all his success. Couldn't get it done at Nebraska, was given plenty of opportunity, but back at the place that he initially broke out at. And I thought it was interesting when he was in the press conference saying that when you're climbing the field, they don't talk about like the level of where you're happy, like mattering. So
Yeah.
I'm like, dang, was he not happy at Nebraska, his alma mater? Like that's like every former
Well,
player's
I
dream, it
think,
seems like, is the
yeah.
coach there. But UCF was where he was winning, and he would seem like given all the patience in the world and opportunities and resources in Nebraska to go and win over there, but it just sounds like he was miserable over there.
Well, I think if if they would have joined the Big 12 earlier, UCF, I think you would have seen him stay. I think, he helped start that path, but I think yeah, it's a weird world of coaching now. And like obviously I'm coaching here and even now like I don't deal with this NIL stuff, but people and their greed and everything that goes on, you never know what's going to happen in a given season, and it's just wild.
Hmm. Don't think there's anything else to mention in college football right now.
Yeah,
There's been a couple other big names that have entered the portal, I guess, besides Devin Brown. Malik Murphy from Duke just went over there.
yep.
He set the school record for touchdown passes, led him to a 9-3 record. I'm sure he'll be a hot name that people will be going out and getting.
General
Former
Booty.
Buckeye Chip Trainum entered the portal. I guess the grass wasn't greener over at Kentucky.
Nope.
Jackson Arnold, the highly touted recruit from Oklahoma that got benched, is in the portal too. So we'll see where teams decide to go. But we can move over to the NFL discussion and talk about this
Oh,
Browns game. And
gross.
as I'm getting
So
ready to talk
gross.
about it, I see that the Browns have waived Kadarius Toney
Yeah, you're
after
Florida
two
guy.
days of being on the active roster to show exactly like why it was a mistake to bring him on the team to begin with. But this was never going to be. It sucked that the game had to go that way. It seems like now we're at a position with Cleveland, Pittsburgh, where we're at least splitting games and we're not losing both of them like we used to. But figure that since we won that first one in Cleveland in the snow, the second one wasn't going to go our way, especially after seeing how Pittsburgh's offense can play against Cincinnati the week before.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we are at 3-10 right now as we speak,
Yep.
Ben. I'm hearing more rumors that if Kevin Stefanski finishes 3-14, that they'll fire him. But when you look at the way that the Browns schedule shakes up at the end of the year, I'm like, man, can you really punish him if he
That's like
loses to the Chiefs,
that's like
to the
can
Bengals, to the Dolphins, to the Ravens with a
that's
backup
like
quarterback?
that's like sending him out to like the front lines and go, listen, if you don't get 2 kills this week, you are going to be thrown into jail. And it's like, dude, you gave me a gun with no weapon, like I mean a weapon with no ammo. Like, like that's the kind of vibe that I get from it.
Yeah. Yeah, that Steelers game though, they beat us 27-14. It was not one of Jameis's best games that we've seen. 24-41, 212 yards, two touchdowns, two picks. Not a great day for Russell Wilson either. Just 158 yards, two touchdowns, but no picks. Um, yeah, so now we got Kansas City coming up
Oh
this
yeah,
week.
this is a loss. This is just
We get to be the home team at
oh
least, but
gross.
yeah, it's not going to be
This
a
is
really
gonna be
fun game
so
to
bad.
watch. On top of watching Cleveland get shellacked, then you got to listen to the broadcasters talk about how Patrick Mahomes making a 2 yard underhanded screen pass.
Dude,
He's
they
the only
treat
guy in the
him
league that can make that pass, and that's what makes him such a generational talent. It's going to
they
be like
treat him
double
like a
boring,
they
double
treat him like
cringe.
a freaking like he's like some saint of the NFL. Like this guy throws intercept as many interceptions as a lot of quarterbacks and doesn't get talked about. As soon as like Jameis Winston throws one, it's like, oh, he's terrible. It's like, let's consistency here. And look, the Chiefs get blessed a lot. There's a photo of that last game they just had where the guy's
Very,
like choking out the dude and there's no holding call. And I'm like guys, it's very blatant.
yeah.
It's just,
I still think Pat's probably the best player in football, and he'd be the first quarterback that I'd pick. But this season, he's ninth in yards, eighth in touchdowns, and 10th in QBR. Like it's a down year for him. And the picks, he's got 11. It's more than we're used to seeing from him as well. But yeah, it seems like it's just unnecessary discussion. Like they're reaching for like these things. And it's like you don't have to reach. Like he's a good
just
player. You don't have
hell
to
yeah, I
try to
see it.
paint this narrative. He's painting it himself.
Like,
But Kareem Hunt will be coming back to Cleveland.
wow, he's looking great now.
Uh, 608 yards on the year, five touchdowns. He's only averaging 3.6 per carry though. But either way, still a good pickup for them that I wish that we could have gotten. Nick Chubb just
Yeah.
still, for whatever reason, whether it's because of not being 100% or just the way that we're
Yeah,
having to
he
play
doesn't seem the
football
same.
lately. Yeah, Still not 100 yards in the game yet. Against Pittsburgh, he had 11 carries for 48, which was one of his better outings of the year, but still, it's not used to what we're seeing from Chubb. He still didn't even have 300 total rushing yards yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. It's so frustrating. So frustrating.
Yeah. I'm checking to see if there's anything else that we got to discuss here, but that was pretty much
Not really.
everything that I think
A short
wanted to
episode today.
mention.
Short
Yeah.
episode today.
Shorter one, but a lot of big news to talk about. I guess we can finish up with fantasy football playoffs. Have you made any, Ben, or are you figuring to be in
So
contention?
I was in college football playoffs. Oh no, sorry, college football this season, and I was the third place finisher last year. And I thought, my team's pretty good. I had a lot of loaded guys, and then somehow this season, all the guys decided to get hurt on my team at some point, and just
Mhm.
I've had to go into the waiver wire a lot. Um, I lost in the wild card of the playoffs like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. I
Mm.
lost because I made a trade in the middle of the year to get a quarterback, Giovanni Lopez from South Alabama. He's like really good dual threat guy in fantasy. That's great. And I decided to not play him, but play Dylan Gabriel. And that just so happened to be the Dylan Gabriel game where he struggled. He only got like, I don't know, 22 points or whatever. It might even worse than that. Uh and then the guy I played beat me by 3 points. And I was actually the lowest seed. And I was like playing all these teams that were like 10-2. And I was like the lowest seed because I was like 6-6. And yeah, I didn't make it any farther. So once again, I fall short of the championship.
Mm. It's tough, man. We got playoffs going on in the league that Bryce and I are in. We're actually set to face each other in the first
There
round.
you
I'm the
go.
4 seed, he's the 5 seed. Um, he's excited about the matchups that he has with some of his guys this week, but I'm very excited about some of the matchups that my guys are going to be having too. Especially with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase just being on the tear that they've been on lately. Like Jamar Chase is wide receiver one in our league. The last 4 games, he's had 53, 19, 14, and 34 points. And then
Goodness.
Joe has been able to come up here as quarterback two in our league these last 4 games and get 43, 33, 22, and 28, and every time that they get a touchdown, I obviously get rewarded both times for it, which is awesome. But yeah, we're going with Burrow at quarterback, Alvin Kamara and David Montgomery at running back, AJ Brown, Jamar at wide receiver. Uh, looks like TJ Hawkinson's gonna be at tight end for me. Flex will be a toss up between Tony Pollard and Devontae Adams, but it's been Pollard most of the year. Trying to add a defense instead of the Bears since it hasn't been as dominant lately as it was at the start of the season. And I got Aubrey kicking for me from Dallas, so I like my
That's easy
odds.
there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, speaking of
out of
kickers, can we get
out,
rid of Dustin Hopkins, by the way, Browns? Goodness gracious.
out of all those guys, just my wide receivers, Brown and Chase, are facing anybody that's ranked in the top 14 at defending that position. So I feel decent about my matchups too. But we'll see what happens. I'm sure Bryce is going to have a lot to say about the result of that if it goes a certain way. But in this league, I'm always like a playoff team, even like one of the higher seeds, but I always just struggle with health at the end of the season, having like my full roster there. And this is the first year I can really recall where it's like I got all my guys, so I only got myself to blame if I lose
Sometimes
this game.
it's true. True.
Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, look, I love fantasy. I love fantasy. College fantasy has been something that I never got into NFL. I tried. It just wasn't fun for me. Something about college fantasy, getting a guy from, like University of Louisiana Monroe, and he puts up a bunch of yards, and it's like, this is so cool, right? And you learn about all the players, and which is really fun as well. But dude, I get you, man. It's so fun, and you just never stop. So, but yeah, anything else you want to add for today? Or do we call that a show for the day? A nice short one today.
I think that's a show.
Yeah.
Next
It was
week we'll talk more in depth about the matchups and try to
yeah,
make some predictions and
yeah.
stuff. But
And obviously as basketball is going on, we're keeping track of things for basketball. But again, we want to get through this crazy football season, then we could totally focus on basketball and spring training for baseball and kind of give you guys our takes when it comes to that and allow us to obviously it gets better and as it gets closer to playoffs and March Madness and so on for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cavs still
So
looking good though in the meantime.
yeah, they are. They are. They're looking good. Best record in the NBA. Yeah, it's a great time to be an Ohio fan. Outside of football.
Outside of our pro
Um,
football teams.
that is true. Yes. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the podcast. Also, comment below. What is your favorite Christmas movie? I'm interested. I'm interested to see what people say. My dad will probably say, "Oh, I don't like Christmas movies," because he's been calling out Josh like the last 3 episodes. Um, just every episode calling out Josh on something. So
Oh,
who
that
knows
wouldn't
what he's
surprise me.
who knows what he's going to call my call out Josh this time around. We'll see what Dad has to say. Dad, let us know. I'll tell Josh. I'll make sure I tell him. But yeah. So, anyways, hope you guys enjoyed watching this on YouTube. Go ahead and click that thumbs up button, subscribe button, hit the notification bell. And if you love listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure you give us a nice little rating there. Save it so that way you can find us every single week. We try to put it out there again. No Heisman list or anything because obviously that's going to be announced. We'll be able to talk about that, obviously as well as those things happen. But yeah, it's going to be a great week of sports. Bowl season's right around the corner. Everything's happening at once. So enjoy your weekend with friends and family. And until next time, we'll see ya.